sorry, I couldn't help myself. I was crawling all over you.
Get off me, Pete.
Let's have another look at.
I'm not minimizing that for a second. I'm talking about the idea that Israel, they believe correctly, will ever give up real control without outside pressure. So the US is playing a pantomime. It's like Kabuki theatre that happens every few months. Of course, the problem for the US and frankly much of the Arab world, who again in the last few days have talked about releasing a new peace plan, two-state solution, Palestinian state, who are they actually talking to here? They're not talking to the Israeli people or the Israeli leadership because they ignore it. And there's no pressure or ramifications for doing so. So ultimately, I would argue, I'm not alone in saying this, that at some point, a major global leader will say, the two-state solution is dead, it's over. There's only two choices then. There's a one-state solution, which is an apartheid state, which is essentially what's happening now, or a state for equal rights, where everyone lives equally, Jew, Muslim, Palestinian, whatever you may be. That is the only two options, and Israel at the moment has chosen an apartheid state.
Fascinating insights into the topic. Antony Lowenstein, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for talking to us here on TRT World.
140 countries, so the majority of countries on the planet, have bought some form of this technology in the last decades. How that relates to what's happening now, since October 7, is really clear, is that Israel has been live testing, both the government and private companies, live testing new weapons in Gaza. And that's not just for a domestic Israeli audience, who obviously are mostly supporting the war, but for a global market that in months and years to come are likely want to buy those tools and technologies in their own wars. I think a context that people often don't remember, that Israel, to me, and I say this as someone who's Jewish myself, is that Israel in some ways is exporting the occupation globally. What's happening in Palestine is not staying there. Actually having a problem because 4 months in, Hamas is still standing, bloodied to be sure, but is still standing and arguably is never going to be fully defeated. So I think we're talking about surveillance tech, drones, and various other forms like that, which, as I said, are being tested in real time, which we'll see in other conflicts around the world in the coming months and years.
To that point, has there been any loss of confidence in this high tech? Because one of the things that we saw on October 7th is the first thing that Hamas